Hello, I will say something about seminars, webinars as part of the overall teaching and learning process under the title Sync and Flow. And the starting point is this model where we have the timeline here. It's organized in both time and space, but space might be both physical and virtual. And on this timeline, we might have webinars or seminars, synchronous interaction that's coded as the S in the PISA model. And this might be organized by different kinds of software like WordPress with some additions like Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle or Teams or Zoom or the new Zoom additions that are coming out in 2020 and 2021. This is time-based or time-linked activities. But in addition, we need the MOOC book, or what we in Norwegian are called digitale læreverk, that are literature that combines elements from the traditional textbook with video recordings of lectures, with lecture notes, with slides from presentations, with audio, sound bites, and not least interactive problems and assignments that students solve interactively with the computer, but they might also, send in to the teacher or to be evaluated by the teacher or by fellow students. So this kind of document, this kind of literature is different from previous textbook, and it's not the same like the learning management system. This is not time bound in time. It can be linked in time, but it's not structured by time. It's structured by the logic of the subject matter, primarily. And it is divided in two kinds of text, what we call the rich text and the content, and the videos and still images, etc., that might be used before, under, and after a seminar or webinar. That stabilizes the study. Students who come late into the program, they can start reading here and catch up with the other students. But there's also called paratext from para, which means along with, or sometimes against, as in parapluie, umbrella in English, parapluie in French, against rain, or parasol against the sun, or paramedics together with the medical teams. But aside from that, when people are taken to hospital and the paramedics do stuff to help ameliorate the situation on the scene of accident or in the car, etc. Paratext is the additional text that defines the course and the course material, what you are supposed to learn, what you are supposed to know before you start to learn, reference lists, and other kind of what you can become as when you have taken this kind of course of education, and so on and so forth. That's also an important part. It's not part of the subject proper. Okay. So when we deal with this, we have an example here that is made in WordPress, but it could be, as mentioned, some other system. We have a sort of entry picture. We have a welcome video that everybody is asked to look through. And then we have some stuff that sort of organizes the seminar or webinar preparations and the program for the day. Maybe also the preparations may contain summaries from the previous webinar or seminar. That is not part of the courseware proper, the textbook, but it's part of the course organization. And then we might have some other stuff. We will look into that. So here we can explain it a little better. So the introductory video should support a very important aim, namely that when you give a good lecture, the point of the lecture is to have some kind of synchronization between the ideas the lecturer has developed in his own mind or her mind. And that should be sort of synchronized in the heads of all the participants in the audience. And so that when you develop the idea and make it more richer, deeper, the same kind of process that sort of synced with the content of the lecture is reproduced in the heads of the audience. That's a good lecture. But as a matter of fact, I think the same principle of synchronization in terms of attitude, in terms of thinking, in terms of focus, is the same when we organize online courses. And that's the problem when we cannot meet in person, where we are working on this kind of synchronization with the audience and with the students. When we come online, that's not so easy. So the experience from the COVID situation from March 2020 and until far into fall is that the system pushes a lot of messages and orders and structure onto the student, but to synchronize in a social sense needs negotiation, needs communication, mutuality, dialogue, and that is not so easy done, or it's not used, teachers are not used to do that online. So this document here, the purpose is to organize the time, but at the same time in a negotiated way with the students. And this video sort of introduces that process, that sort of leads into a discussion and negotiation and decision on how the webinar or seminar should be organized. And in this particular example, with new kind of participants that came internationally, some countries should participate but could not for various internal reasons, and we had to switch. And then we could not really prepare that process so well. So we had to put emphasis on what is called onboarding, logically the transfer from the video presentation to how we actually organize the webinar or seminar and the process. So the date of time is a negotiated process, but with some leadership, of course, from the institution and from the teacher that organize these courses. Now, to find that, you can go into this page, of course, but it's good to have a sort of clearly defined entry point. In this case, we have INCODE standing for International Joint Course Development, which is a separate web page with several courses, and we choose one, and then we come into the organizing page for this particular material. Now, as part of that process, we also reflect upon what students are doing. In this case, there are 3 excellent videos that participants made. In this case, it was made last week compared to the week I'm recording this. So it's quite recent. And then they contributed that. And there's a 4th video that we don't reproduce here because that was excellent for use as an empirical case study for the webinar last week, so to speak. So the student contribution become an important part of the webinar. And then, of course, you need some input from the teacher that sort of take this kind of contribution from the teacher student group, but in some sense lift it and enhance it and, you know, deliver it back to the student group as something they can work upon. But that creates synchronization or identification. Now, there's also online course material, as mentioned, that students can study on their own along the course. And that is quite extensive, but it's made interactively. So that is not only reading from paper or from the screen that emulate paper, it's interactive. And here's the table of contents. This is the onboarding, and you can see it's quite extensive. How to get up and running with this particular course. Then there's another chapter, in this case about presentation, modes of presentation, technology of presentation, and then some more on interaction, because the course is, of course, about making online teaching and learning. But that might be different from other courses in healthcare, in mathematics, in engineering, in chemistry. And we have made many courses like that as well, according to the same logic. And finally, about the synchronous interaction and the analysis and annotation part. Now, in order for students to have some space to do stuff, we have also a sandbox area where they can test their own knowledge and play around without harm, without risking anything being destroyed. And here you can see a setup with one placeholder framework for every student of, in this case, a student group from one particular country, where we were supposed to have several more, but they could not for these various reasons. But in this case, that's ready-made, so the students can go straight ahead and work on interesting problems rather than all the setup. And then finally, there's the course-specific paratext that is available in several places, but that resides outside the course. So we have three types of texts here. We have the organizing text for the seminar, webinar, and the flow in time. We have the online textbook that should be open, available for everybody in the nation or globally, that everybody can use as a resource. And then we have the course-specific paratext that sort of positions these two things in context, but are not part of the subject matter. Very often we see these three texts sort of mashed up in one well, one soup, and that is not such a good thing. It's better to differentiate and explain to students what is what and where they can find that. That helps to reorganize, to organize the mind and orient yourself. So back again to the main model. The MOOC book is a global textual universe. It should be, in my view, handled by the library system, the national library system, institutional library system, international library system, and the libraries, university libraries primarily, but also other libraries. It's part of their blood to collaborate and be open about access to knowledge. So that's much better than having institutions starting to fight between themselves about who can have the best textbook. That creates a lot of problems for the academic field. I don't go into that, but this is really a stern warning. So that's basically it. Let us discuss how to create good flow and synchronization in both online and face-to-face study programs. Thanks for your attention.